Hello, how are you doing today? Today I'm going to be doing something new. I'm going to talk about the game and try to do what I call theorycrafting, and talk about where I think the game is going. This game right here, oxygen not included, you basically are dropped right in the middle of like either an asteroid or a planet or something, and you have to, try and survive. And currently, this right here is the thermal upgrade zone. I'm going to start a new game that I'm going to talk about. Now, with this thermal upgrade, they allow different temperatures to interact with the world, and it's very interesting. It also ran into another interesting thing whenever I'll tell you more about it whenever we start. This update makes it so that you can actually get to, water much easier, and there's also the thermal update, which means that you can see all this area. It's down to that low. And then also, one thing I found interesting was whenever you go to options, whenever you look at temperature units, it's not just Celsius and Kelvin, or it's Celsius and Fahrenheit, it's also Kelvin. So let's see exactly how much temperature we're dealing with in Kelvin. Because you see, the basis of it is at absolute zero. It is the coldest that it can possibly be. And there's no way of getting colder than that. Now, while I was, looking at different ways to test things out, like for example, making working laboratories and different ways to produce oxygen better, I came across this one mode that is debug mode. And whenever I did that, I found that you can do a cell painter, basically make it so you can actually, like this right now it says ice, and like you can actually, instead of having this spot here, you can just put a block of ice there and there and there. In fact, you can even overwrite things, and you can click and drag and do all kinds of stuff. And when you look at it, you'll see that it is 232 Kelvin versus 203 Kelvin. But in order to properly show, since not everyone knows how Kelvin works, let's switch to Fahrenheit. X. And as you see, negative 41.1 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty cold. And then next to it, you can see the temperature dropping, because the temperature, there's a absence of heat there, which means that the heat that's surrounding it is being drawn in and becoming thinner, and therefore cooling the rest of it there. So it's actually acting very much like physics. And on top of that, whenever I looked at the different kinds of things you can do, there's oxygen, water, dirt, vacuum, aerogel, algae, bleach stone, so on and so forth. And then something that really, made me notice it was the liquids. Like there's liquid carbon dioxide and all that. If you get air cold enough, you can actually turn it into a liquid. And if you get that liquid even colder, you can get a solid. So this right here made me realize that whenever you're dealing with this game, like for example, we have power, hydrogen generators. It needs to have hydrogen being put into it. Now, whenever one way to make hydrogen in this game that I've actually found is using the electrolyzer. It basically separates water, which is H2O, into oxygen and hydrogen. And the great thing about that is it's an oxygen source, for one thing. For another thing, it's a hydrogen source. Now, at first I was kind of worried because, you know, trying to set up different ways of storing hydrogen, you know, it was not exactly a lot of fun, because like the hydrogen would just keep building up and you'd have nowhere to put it. Now, I would sometimes, you know, try and set up something to start collecting it and putting it into the hydrogen generator, so, you know, you'd have somewhere to put it, like it would be producing power. But right now, just doing that, you know, ends up losing power over time. Now, something I figured out is if you can actually, I think later on they plan on having a way to cool certain gases and liquids down enough, like for example, hydrogen, to go from, you know, gaseous hydrogen to liquid hydrogen to solid hydrogen, and each time you make it cold enough to go to the next stage, it becomes smaller. There's less of it. So there's less of it taking up, you know, space. So you basically start storing, like, you know, hydrogen gas in one room, and then whenever it's cold enough in that one room, it starts to, you know, condense into, you know, hydrogen liquid, and then you pump it into the next room, which cools it down even further, and then it becomes solid. And then what you do then is you just keep placing it into a room, and then later on, whenever you have enough hydrogen, you know, stockpiled, you can just feed, like, you know, 10 hydrogen generators with this hydrogen gas. And let me see something. Where is it? There is no like liquid intake, so you can't actually place liquid hydrogen into it, which I personally think would actually be pretty cool. But you know, they're not quite there yet. And then they also got different, you know, things. Like, for example, they have some steam here, which whenever you do the temperature overlay and you drop some steam there, as you can see, there's the heat. And it dissipates fairly well. Sometimes, you know, you'll do something like this, and as you see right here, it shows that you're getting liquid. It's condensing and becoming liquid again, which I think is pretty cool. Another thing is whenever you're looking at the different materials, you get this stuff like, you know, tungsten diselenide, tungsten gas, unobtainium, and there's vacuum, which, you know, just removes whatever's there and makes it so there's nothing there at all. And then you got wolframite, all these different things. Eventually, I think it's going to be similar to Dwarf Fortress, where you would do stuff like, you know, find magma, which, by the way, there is magma down here. And when you're dealing with magma, you know, it's really, really hot. And one thing that, you know, you can do in this, like I think you're going to be able to do in this game, is eventually you will be able to do something similar. Like in Dwarf Fortress, you can at some point you're supposed to be able to do stuff like pour liquid adamantium on a person, and it becomes their skin. And basically, you know, like Dwarf Fortress, you can do just about anything that you can imagine. And what happens is the adamantium grafts their skin, and so they basically become, you know, dwarfs that are just absolutely invincible. They can't be killed. They can still get sick, you know. And then another thing you can do is, like, you can start storing chlorine, you know, gas and turn it in. Like if you get a whole lot of chlorine gas, you know, you can start like, you know, condensing it into liquid and then solid, and, you know, just store it somewhere and surround it with the insulated tile that they got. And, you know, like let's see, where's the solid chlorine? Ah, dang. Paint. And there you go, it's frozen chlorine. Solid, negative 189 degrees Fahrenheit. Surrounded by insulated tiles. Now, by putting it here, you know, you can put a whole lot more here than, you know, you can put, you know, the chlorine gas, so it's a better way to store it. Another thing is, you know, later on, like, you can do stuff like make things that can operate at a much hotter temperature, like liquid, or, well, here we go, molten copper. Molten copper, you know, at higher temperatures, it stays, you know, liquid. So what you can do is you can actually run a cooler system where you have liquid metal cooling down an even hotter metal, you know, and running it through in order to cool that down. And that's another thing that I think you can end up doing eventually. And like the possibilities with this game are just about endless. And that's all I got for theory crafting today. If you like the video, like if you want to hear more of this, subscribe. I don't just do theory crafting, I do all kinds of stuff. So thank you for watching, and trying this experiment with me.